look after themselves, how much the leaders are stepping up and setting standards and setting boundaries. And the less I have to do when it comes to the team, the better. The more healthy the team is if they're calling the shots and if they're holding each other up to standards. And I feel like we've got that happening right now.
Things that stick out about projects are the ones that are transformational and make a difference in the lives of whether it's students or student athletes, coaches, fans, staff in their operations.
Welcome into the Inside WSU Athletics podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. We've got a lot to cover. Our guest that will be stopping by here today, we'll have WSU rowing head coach Jon LaRiviere, and we'll also get the latest with facilities for WSU Athletics with Jason Baerlocher. Big thank you, as always, to our sponsor, BECU. And with that, we bring in, as we always do, Jon Haarlow. Jon, it's great to see you. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Chris. Good to be back for another episode. Nice to be back in Pullman. When we were doing the last episode, we were in Palm Springs, had some really productive conversations down there. Coach and I have been, and the staff have been, I think, in 6 or 7 different cities all across the state and then beyond down in Palm Springs, just getting in front of Cougs, having conversations, getting feedback. But it is nice to be back on campus in Pullman, back here in familiar territory a bit, but it's another busy week, which we'd have it no other way. So we've got Wednesday, head to Vancouver, got the Board of Regents discussion there, Thursday, Friday. Always thankful to get in front of that group and have productive conversations. I feel like it's a extraordinarily pivotal time for not just athletics, but for campus as a whole and what we do as an institution moving forward. So happy to be down there. I was chatting with someone, I think over the last 5 years, we've had some changes in various leadership roles or whatever else. I think I've presented at every single Board of Regents meeting over the last 5 years, and there's like 4 or 5 a year. So always appreciative to be in front of that group and have those conversations in Vancouver. Then Friday we'll fly from Portland to Vegas for the WCC tournament. Excited about that. Anxious to see both teams compete and have some productive conversations down there as well. We've got then on Monday, Tuesday, Pac-12 in-person meetings for the AD group. Again, more stuff to continue to just hammer out as a league as we work towards the launch of the new Pac-12, which date is coming ever so rapidly, July 1 for that launch, but couldn't be more excited about that. So excited about the conversations, not just with the league, but with other ADs as well as we continue to put our heads together about what can make this league great moving forward.
Well, and talking about kind of moving forward and what's going on right now, it is another busy week for Cougar Athletics. Time to recap it all. So here we go. Buckle up, the latest, because so many programs are in action right now. You mentioned the WCC tournament. Both the Cougar men and women will be heading down to Las Vegas for men's basketball. Tough road losses at LMU and Pepperdine last week to close out the regular season. The men will be the 8th seed at the WCC tournament. They'll play Friday against the winner of the Thursday game. That's between Pepperdine and Portland. So the game will tip off at 6 o'clock from the Orleans Arena in Vegas. The women, great way to finish the regular season. They captured both games, defeating Seattle U and St. Mary's. So the win over St. Mary's, it was great to have that victory. A win is awesome anytime, but especially on Senior Day. Jean Chu and Lauren Glazer being recognized post-game on Saturday. So the women's side for WSU basketball, they enter the WCC tournament as the number 9 seed. They will face Seattle U Thursday night in Las Vegas, and the winner will play Pacific on Friday. So that game actually Thursday during the day in Vegas. The winner will take on Pacific on Friday. So track and field competed at the MPSF Championships in Reno. Sophomore Solomon Kipchoge captured the 5,000 meter title, leading a sweep of 5 Cougars in the top 5 spots. So big congratulations there. Next up, the NCAA Indoor Championships in Fayetteville, Arkansas. WSU will be represented by Rosemary Longisa at the NCAA Championships. So best of luck, of course, to all of our Cougs competing there. Swimming, preparing for the NCAA Championships. That's March 18th through the 21st in Atlanta. And baseball, so some success for the baseball team, an outstanding trip, really. Some strong results, even though a couple of near misses against BYU, but a great way to kind of cap things up. Played 2 games each against BYU and Long Beach State, going 2-2. So sweeping Long Beach State and doing it on their field. This week, WSU will start a 4-game series against future Pac-12 member Texas State. That will be down in Texas starting on Thursday. Tennis, a tough 2-game road swing in Seattle, falling to number 12 Washington. We were responding Saturday with a victory over number 36 UC Santa Barbara. So the Cougs face number 12 Pepperdine earlier this week. Next in action, March 13th at Oregon. Women's golf set to begin the Julie Inkster Invitational March 9th through the 10th in San Francisco. And men's golf will be down in Lake Merced, California, March 9th through the 10th. John, it feels like we say it every week, but there is a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot of big-time Cougs doing big-time things with big-time opportunities. Anxious to see both men's and women's basketball team with opportunities ahead of them to compete here in the tournament. Obviously, I do want to shout out the women's basketball team for closing out the regular season strong with 2 home wins in a row. That was awesome to see. Baseball, you mentioned it, but what a team that's demonstrated toughness so far early in the season, playing an extraordinarily tough non-conference schedule. Took some knocks early in some of those series, but closed it out strong, continued to fight. So excited to see what they're going to continue to do. Like you mentioned, a future Pac-12 opponent in Texas State, who historically has had a really good program. They're good now, and I would assume continue to be going forward. I love this, Chris. This is what, of all the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that's not sports-centric, whether it's financial or the business side of this, or some of the other not so fun things that sometimes come along with the entity that we have here. But this is at the heart and the core of what we do. And this is what makes me excited about the opportunities that we give these student athletes to go and compete and do what they love and do it on a big time stage, and a number of opportunities to do that going forward. So excited to see them compete.
Well said. And coming up here, first, we're going to have a word from our sponsor, BECU, and then we'll have our conversations. Excited for our 2 guests coming up on this week's episode.
How do you spot a Coug in the wild? Head to toe crimson, gray, and, well, anything except purple? A simple go Cougs at an airport halfway around the globe? Or maybe just a little pride from BECU and some extra money in your pocket when you pay for your tacos. Get the card Cougs everywhere recognize. Join today. BECU. Go Cougs.
Well, we are excited to welcome in our first guest. In our house, every Cougar athletic program we cheer our hearts out for, but this one is the one at least closest to us. My wife, a former member of the Cougar rowing program, and John, with that, I'll toss it to you. Who do we have joining us here today?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Excited about this. Happy to be joined now by head rowing coach Jane LaRiviere. Coach, great to see you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
So we'll start this off with some excitement information. This fall, the 2006 rowing team will be inducted into the WSU Athletic Hall of Fame. Do you have any thoughts or memories, or when you think of that team, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, first of all, this is the first official word that I've had. Bill Stevenson said that it wasn't official yet, so I assume that if you're saying it, it's official. So that's kind of fun.
Breaking news right here on the podcast.
And, like if our rabid fan base gets a hold of this, who knows what's going to happen. But,
I love it.
Honestly, it was a very, very special time. I was a pretty young coach, and we had high expectations, but I don't think we ever planned, we didn't plan we're going to be top 5 team in the country. But so many things went right, and they're incredibly hard workers. And we call, the team is, many of the members came back for the reunion that we had last September. And, I think that the original, everyone knows we've got a lot of Canadians on our team. We've got a lot of Kiwis. And the original Kiwis came back, the first and second out of, 10s and 20s that have been through here. And they had a talk with the current members. And I see on the team right now, some of the energy that they inspired still, they're telling them, here's how you have to approach every practice, and here's what you need to do, and a little bit of extra work here, and pay attention to this. And I think it's really cool to see the impact that 2006 group has had, because my first year was 03. And so they were my first recruiting class, and, that really the originals that I inherited and sort of added to. And so it's interesting to see 20 years later, the impact that they're still having on the program. And it was so just fun and heartwarming to have them back in September. And, they haven't changed. They're a little older. They got a few more kids, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty great.
Well, you are the longest tenured head coach at WSU in your 24th season. I mean, that's a really remarkable run. How do you look back on everything that's happened so far and, just being here at this point and more excitement in front of the program?
Well, I've always felt that I've had the support of the department, and I've always felt that, as long as we could get good enough athletes in the door, that we had the resources and the support to be as successful as we could possibly be on a national scale. And, I'm not going to lie, like, we've been having a bit of a rough patch since COVID, but I think we're back now. Like, we're kind of back to where I expect things to be. And I think we're only going to improve in the coming years. The main thing is that, I think lots of coaches here say, you got to find the right fit. But with rowing, we have one of the most beautiful places in the entire country, in the entire North America, and possibly the entire world to row. The Snake River is always impressive. We've got this 16-person rowing tank that is always impressive and has improved our ability to teach and improve technique. And then Bowler Gym is impressive. So, like, from a rowing standpoint, like, obviously we are not football and we're not basketball, but what we can compete with the best in the country for my sport. And that, combined with ongoing support that I've always felt, I just feel really lucky that I've had such a long career. And, when Pat Chun was here, the first meeting I had with him, he's like, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I said, here. And then he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. Like, I hope I never have to leave. You never know these days. But I'm pretty committed, Coug.
We love it, Coach. And I was lucky to be a part of that reunion that you had back in September. It was awesome to see the multiple classes that were there, them interacting with each other, talking about, all their different shared experiences, a big group and a passionate group of Cougs. They were also interacting with this year's team as part of those discussions too. What can you tell us about the makeup of this year's group?
Well, they are really, I always can kind of tell whether we're going to have a good year or not based off of how much the athletes are willing to look after themselves, how much the leaders are stepping up and setting standards and setting boundaries. And the less I have to do when it comes to the team, the better. The more healthy the team is if they're calling the shots and if they're holding each other up to standards. And I feel like we've got that happening right now. And you have to always kind of be careful because, like, one of my things that always sort of gets a bit of a laugh is there's nothing more dangerous than a room full of quiet women. But as long as the talking and the bantering and, the joking around is happening, that's like one key piece to the general feeling. And, we're doing these pieces. We're down in all kinds of weather, all kinds of wind. It's still winter here. I'm bundled up beyond recognition, and they're out rowing in shorts and a t-shirt. And every time we stop in between pieces, they're bumping each other and talking and really focusing in on what they want to do better the next piece. So, I don't know, like, we're pretty isolated down on the Snake. So it's hard to judge speed because we've got ever-changing currents and wind. And, I know where the 2,000 meter course is, and I know when we do 500 meter pieces, but the flow can change the times. And so in terms of being really accurate about how fast we are, it's hard. We won't know until 3.5 weeks when we get to see some of the fastest teams in the country in San Diego.
Speaking of the weather, it's been a relatively mild winter. Has that allowed the team to get on the water a little earlier than normal?
Yeah, I don't know, not so much earlier, because we usually can get on a few days here and there, but the consistency that we've been able to get on, like we've only not rowed a few days since I think we were allowed on January 26th. And there's only been a small handful of days that it's been either windy or there's been, just not worth going down. But they're still pretty hardy, It's still often right around freezing when we finish. So,
Well, it will be a little different when the season opens at the end of the month in San Diego. How different is it rowing on the Snake River compared to San Diego's Mission Bay?
Well, it's saltwater for one, which all the people that coach and train on saltwater, you have to wash your boats every practice because of the corrosion that happens with all the hardware and stuff. So the Snake is still pretty clean, we can take our boats in and out and don't have to worry about it. So that's a factor. It feels a little bit different rowing on saltwater. It just feels a little different. It can be windy. There can be some lane discrepancies, but I'll tell you, it's fun for them to leave Pullman for a few days after all this series of, hard training, get out in some sun. And the whole San Diego Crew Classic, it's like a dog and pony show. There's mariachi bands and there's masters, collegiate rowers, junior rowers, thousands of people descend on this place. And so, it's a really good icebreaker. It's early enough in the season that we can experiment with things. We can go out there and just race our hardest. And, no matter what the results are in March, it's not going to affect. It's a really good stepping stone because it's not one of the regattas that we get into in April where it counts against how our ranking is in the country for, the selection to the NCAA.
Coach, you may have touched on this a bit ago with your answer when you're talking about how you've been a Coug for a long time, which is awesome. And maybe it's as much as things change, they still remain somewhat the same. But in the years that you've been coaching, what are some of the differences, whether that's in the industry or with your student athletes? What are some of the differences between 20 years ago coaching and what you're seeing today?
Well, it's a really good question, because I think assuming that kids aren't as good is a sign of aging. And I can't think that, and I don't see it. We still have this, maybe they're harder to find, I'm not sure, but we still have a large group of women that are willing to work really hard and willing to sacrifice, make the right decisions. It's not, from my perspective, I think it's because rowing's not that fun. It's not a game. No one's going to get rich from it. It still has the fundamental feeling as it did 20 years ago to me. And I get that there's, schools out there now that have more scholarships than us. And there's schools out there that can offer a little bit more money here and there. But at the end of the day, I really feel like the rowers that we find all over the world still embrace the opportunity that they have here and work really hard and are part of the culture that we are always continually trying to propagate. And so I think the other thing that actually is hilarious is that I 15 years ago, I'm dating myself a little bit, I'm talking to these coaches that they're like, we gotta gather up all the cell phones. I got a bag that I make everybody put their cell phone in the bag, and well, there's no service down at the boathouse, so I don't have that worry. It's hilarious how we force them to spend 3 hours with no, we have internet, but if anybody ever found out the password, we'd be changing it. So it's 3 hours a day where those kids can't go on their cell phones, and I think it's good for them.
Well, something you kind of touched on with your answer when you're discussing the reunion back in the fall, but recruiting and where recruiting is taking you and how it's been all over the globe, all over the world. Can you expand on that? Is there an area that you tend to focus on?
Well, the area, we certainly always have focuses, but the focuses have shifted over the years. We've had a lot of Lithuanians, we've had a lot of Czech Republic, we've had a lot of Canadians. We're in this really, we have a great reputation in New Zealand, and we're getting some of the top-notch kids out of there. And, I love being an underdog. And I do think that part of the Cougar mentality is, bit of an underdog, punching above our weight. But the competition for rowers in the United States is pretty fierce for the ones that are good enough. But we can look to these other countries and get the equivalent, their top kids, their kids that are going to be on their senior national teams moving forward. So we are currently, I am spending a fair bit of time in New Zealand. We signed 4 top kids from New Zealand last year. And, I would love to sign a few more Americans. There's no question about it. The Americans that we do have get developed within our team. We call them the development squad. And we have, kids that want to try rowing. They come from very athletic backgrounds. They might be swimmers or cross country. They might be tall. They have to be tall and strong. But the top American kids that we're developing in most cases ourselves. We find somebody that has a little bit of talent, and they can rise up through the ranks. But you need a good mix. Like, you need those kids that are a bit hardened and they've been to the line a lot and they've been in stressful situations and they can perform for you, but they elevate the other people around too, to what the expectation is and how hard you have to work and what the attitude is, and take every, stay in the moment kind of thing, without getting, looking too far ahead.
That kind of leads me to my next question. Has there been a bump in high school rowing in the United States? That I know you talked about that development piece, but has there been an increase there that has helped kind of at that grassroots level?
I think that there has, but the bump has been going on for a long time because there are a lot of opportunities in women's rowing. Like, I think, women's rowing was added to the NCAA program in 1997. And I believe that since then, there's been more and more and more programs. So yeah, there has been a bump. But there's also a lot of programs that we're competing with for the same pool of 25, 30 kids. There might be 40 kids in a place, but there's only 2 or 3 that are good enough for D1 rowing. And, then we were like Michigan, Virginia, Stanford, Cal, it's a lot of competition. So you got to find a way to win, right? You got to find a way to compete. And this just seems to be the way, that we do it.
Coach, you mentioned that having some of your student athletes go on to represent their national teams. In your time in Pullman, you've had, make sure I get this right here, 5 student athletes that have gone on to row in the Olympics, including gold medalist Lisa Roman. That's quite the accomplishment, and a tip of the hat to you and your development of them. But when a student athlete goes on to realize what I would have to think to be a dream like that, what's that like for you to see, for them to row at that level?
Well, I think when I was watching the Olympic final, I'm almost tearing up now. It was so emotional because, you get invested in these people. And I was just as excited for her and for the whole team, because I am Canadian too. I'm lucky or unlucky, because I root for Canada and the US. And my productivity last week when the Olympics was going on was it hit a rock bottom low, and I'm still digging out from that because I can't help it.
Sure.
But, when that race was over, it was like I was on the sidelines at the Pac-12 championships and watching our own team do something special. I feel invested. And I think that, some of the nice things that Lisa said was how she always felt the support from us through the 10 years that it took her to get to the Olympics. Or I think she went to the Rio Olympics and then she won the medal in the 21, it was the 20 Olympics, but she won in 21. And I mean, Yeva Adamova-Shute graduated in 17, and she made the grand final in Paris in the pair, so those are, it's the way it's supposed to be, because rowing is a lifelong sport, and I want kids to love rowing just as much when they leave here as when they enter the program. And if you have some genetics and desire, you can keep rowing and you can see where it leads you, and I've got 4 or 5 girls on the team right now that if they want to, and they've got the time to commit and the financial backing and all of the pieces of the puzzle, they too could do that. But, it's a rarefied air, people that make it, right?
Yeah, that passion, that emotion that was just evident there on the screen. That's one of the things that makes you great at what you do, Coach. Your passion for these student athletes, your investment in them. It was on full display there, and just appreciate how you go about your business in that way.
I can't help it.
Well, Coach, it's been great catching up. Thanks so much for the time here today.
Well, thank you very much. I've appreciated it. It's fun. Good to get rowing news out in the world, and go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
With that, we'll take a break and welcome in our next guest, Jason Baerlocher, right after this.
How do you spot a Coug in the wild? Head to toe crimson, gray, and, well, anything except purple? A simple go Cougs at an airport halfway around the globe? Or maybe just a little pride from BECU and some extra money in your pocket when you pay for your tacos. Get the card Cougs everywhere recognize. Join today. BECU. Go Cougs.
We're now excited to welcome in our second guest on this week's episode. Jon, can you tell us who we have joining us?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm excited about this. We're excited to be joined by someone who I think extraordinarily highly of and does tremendous work for the Cougs behind the scenes. But Senior Project Manager Jason Baerlocher, who serves in capital projects and facility management, not just for athletics and not just for WSU Pullman, but for the WSU system. So, Jason, excited to have you here. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jon. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about capital projects.
So with that, maybe talk a little bit about your role, what you do for projects. What's a senior project manager entail?
So senior just means I'm old. So project manager, so I'm with facility services, capital division. So essentially it's a project manager. You plan, develop, and implement a variety of capital projects. And as you said, Jon, kind of across the WSU system. And I'm one of many project managers with facility services, but I have been kind of assigned to athletics since about 2013, kind of being the primary point of contact for upcoming projects, planning for those projects. And I was put in that role to help streamline the process and help keep things on track going forward.
And at what point in the planning stages do you become involved in an athletic facility project?
So typically very early on, hopefully I hear about it kind of before it's too far down the road. There's an idea. I get involved very early. I used to have, and I still do have some. We have regular meetings with athletic leadership, including the CAF, talk about what are the needs. We could talk about how would those projects, if they are projects, get developed. So we can kind of come up with plans, costing plans. So typically it's extremely very early on in the project. So we know what we're getting into, and it can be implemented properly.
And then once given approval, what is the process for a facility project, and how long in advance does that process start before fans start to see dirt being moved?
Well, once it's approved, that's a big project. There's a big process. There's a lot in front of the approval process. So some projects take many years. And as you've seen here in Pullman, I mean, we have projects that are 10 plus years. Like a Taylorport Sports Complex, for example, is 20 years in the making. So once we actually have funding and we get approval, things happen pretty quickly. It takes, depending on the size of the project, it takes 3 to 4 months to get contracts in place with design and build partners. Then it also depends on the size of the project. the design itself might take a year, but we're also working around program, competition, practice, and academic event schedules. So sometimes we'll start the process in time to either have enough time to design, or we'll adjust our design time so that we implement that project at the right time when there's a downtime or when it works best for that facility or that program.
Kind of laughing to myself during your earlier answer there, Jason, as to how early in the project you get involved, because we've certainly tried to improve how early you get involved in those projects to be when they're at the inception, right? And it's not just one of us coming to you and saying, hey, we've got this big idea, grand idea. Jason's always like the voice of reason. Okay, we need to make sure that we've got understanding of the scope. Is it funded? Let's reel ourselves in here. But one of the great things, and I can't stress this enough, and I want everybody to understand this, is Jason does a tremendous job of delivering these projects on time and on budget. And it's been a wonderful partnership. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jason, Kate in your shop, and Joe Klein and Olivia Yang, the partnership that we have there of, okay, we have this idea or this renovation needs to happen. And then what you all are able to do with the funding that we are given or raised or whatever else it is, typically, I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's philanthropic donations that are raised towards these strategic projects. Then you all take it and make something far greater than I think we could have ever done. And again, grateful for that partnership. So once the project's complete and you've delivered on it, are you still involved in the facility once it's been handed over to us as the owners?
To a certain degree, yes. And we try to make sure that operational transition happens smoothly. So once folks move in and start using the facility for its use, we're checking things and making adjustments. You finish a building, you think it was going to be used a certain way, and the athletes or students or coaches start using that facility, and you go, oh, we should adjust this, change that door lock, do this. And then sometimes, like you said, John, these are philanthropic projects. So we have a cash flow essentially, or money coming in. And sometimes we defer some things, like, okay, we're going to wait and buy these particular items a little bit later and implement those. So that kind of keeps me involved as well. And then adjustments over time.
So I'm gonna miss on these, but just add to this list if you would. But I know that you're involved with the baseball project, Taylor Sports Complex, the Champion Center, which was, if people don't know, that was you took a racquetball court and made a high-tech, state-of-the-art learning and mental health center for our student athletes, which is pretty incredible. You're obviously leading us in the Gisa Field fan and student athlete experience project there. I know you were involved with some stuff on Vancouver, so I'm just mentioning on the athletics ones, but I know that you've done huge projects on the Vancouver campus as well. Do you have a favorite project that and you don't have to demonstrate athletic bias if you don't want, I get it, but do you have a favorite project that you've been a part of in your time at WSU?
I wouldn't say a particular favorite project, but I would say there's a lot of projects that stick out. And you mentioned quite a few there that would be great projects as a favorite. But the ones that stick out, the things that stick out about projects are the ones that are transformational and make a difference in the lives of whether it's students or student athletes, coaches, fans, staff, in their operations. One that sticks out a little bit, you mentioned baseball. Worked on the baseball project for over the many years, trying to planning that, not designing it so much, but figuring out how much it's going to cost. Where's it going to go? How can we afford this? How can it fit within the funds we've raised? And over that time, you watch these baseball players who had locker rooms and coaches' offices and weight rooms over in Bowler, and were walking back and forth in full gear. They had cleats on. They were back and forth, walking back and forth to the field. So we finished that project, and now they're all in one home. And I remember going into that facility after it was opened up, and they had some equipment coming in late. And I showed up at 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock, and there was a bunch of kids in there. I was shocked when I asked them, "What are you guys doing here so early?" He said, "Well, I got an 8 o'clock class. I just want to be here. It's great. My internet's great in here. I can grab a snack. I can take my class at 8 o'clock. I can go work out. I can go eat with a teammate. We can go play catch, then go back and do another class." All classes were online at that time because it was just after COVID. So those kind of things are great. The Champion Center, going in that space after it's been used, operational. Actually, I sat in that space about a month or so after it opened up, just on a Zoom meeting like this, in class and doing stuff, just to be around it, just to see all the kids and how they use the space. It's great.
Yeah, pretty awesome to watch the impact that those projects have made. I mean, literally hundreds of students that it's been made an impact on. One of the other things I'll just call out, maybe I shouldn't talk about this, but when we were going through the design process for the Taylor Sports Complex and what that scope was going to be looking like with the budget that we had. I mean, we were initially looking at only one end zone, maybe a 75-yard field and this and that. And what you were able to do in working from an efficiency standpoint, economies of scale standpoint, with the contractors to be able to get a full-length field in there and the sprint lanes and the sand pits. I mean, those are the type of value engineering and the expertise that you bring to these projects that aren't celebrated enough yet, or aren't necessarily understood as much by everyone involved. And so I just draw that attention to the processes that we go through with these capital projects are pretty rigorous and involve a lot of parties. But again, as we wrap up here, Jason, just thankful for what you and your crew do and the impact that it makes on our current student athletes and the student athletes that are to come. So thank you again.
No problem. It's a partnership, John. It's but the athletics team, along with the teams that we bring on, we hire as a design builder in a lot of these projects to help us get those added values on projects.
Well, Jason, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here. And that will do it for this week's edition of the podcast. So big thanks to Jason and Jane LaRiviere. For Jon Haarlow, I'm Chris King. Signing off. That will do it for this week's edition of the Inside WSU Athletics podcast. Thanks again to our sponsor, BECU. We'll talk to you again next week. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Cougs.